Day 1. Yesterday was the day when the phone stopped working. They were fine in the morning because I called Mum on the way to work. She wanted to know how Blackwood was doing after her trip to the vet, and that reminded me to get her some more food, the stuff the vet recommended for her. But then Mum started talking about the problems she was having with her car, and I got distracted, and suddenly I was standing outside the office and I'd gone straight past the shop and forgotten to get cat food. So then I was straight into a meeting with the international development people, and I remember coming in a few minutes late and catching the tail end of a conversation about some hacker group that had been in the news. But then Maggie was getting all nervy about whether the Portugal report was going to be done in time, so I had to deal with her. And then the meeting started, so I never heard the end of the thing about the hackers. I had my phone off in the meeting, as I do, because I think otherwise it's rude. So I didn't switch it back on until after lunchtime, and that's when everyone was having trouble connecting to the network, which has happened before if a cell tower goes down. Dan made a shouty call to the phone company from the office landline, and they said they were hoping to have the problem fixed by the end of play. I got the tube home and went to check my phone when I came out of the station, but there was still no signal. At the bus stop there were loads of people having the same problem. And it prompted one of those stranger discussions that happen in London sometimes, when everyone is experiencing the same problem and all the usual social barriers come down briefly. Those always make me uncomfortable. There was a woman there in her 20s who made a joke about it being the hackers, and everyone laughed. I laughed too, but I didn't really get the joke. When I got home, I tried to get online, but the modem just had the one flashing light on it, and there was no connection. I turned on the TV, but the cable box is in a package deal with the internet provider, and that was down as well. I tried to call Mum from the landline, but there was no dialing tone. I read a book instead of going on Facebook or vegging out in front of the TV, and then I went to bed early, and I actually slept. So it turns out maybe Mike was right when he said my insomnia was down to looking at screens right up to bedtime. Although I suspect that going to bed not knowing where Mike was and wondering if he was sleeping with someone else, which it turned out he was, might also have been a factor. And so now to this morning. Still no phone or internet. I woke up and Blackwood was yowling at me, and that's when I realised I'd forgotten to get any food for her yesterday. There was just enough to get a scoop out of the bottom of the tin, but it's all gone now. I waited ages at a crowded bus stop and the bus indicator thing wasn't working, so none of us knew how long the wait was going to be. A bus did come eventually and we piled on, but it turned out the tube station was closed because apparently all the lines are down because the signals work via computer and the whole system is offline. I decided to walk to work, but I shouldn't have bothered because when I got there they were about to close up for the day, because the internet and phones being down meant nobody could get any work done anyway. So I turned around and headed home. I stopped off to grab a sandwich, but I'd spent the last of my cash and the place's card machine wasn't working, and neither were any of the ATMs nearby. The guy at the counter said they'd been cash only since the middle of yesterday afternoon. I got home an hour ago and made a sandwich, and that's when I decided to start writing this. Partly because there's nothing else to do really except read and write. I hope Mum's okay. Her life's not as digitally based as mine, and she has good friends in the village, so I'm sure she's fine. They'll get this under control anyway. It's only the internet. It hasn't even been around for that long, and worst case scenario, they can't get it up and running again and we go back to the way things were before. It wouldn't be so terrible. No Twitter, no Facebook. But we'll manage. We'll manage fine. Mike always said I spent too much time talking to strangers online. Day 2. I have a bit of emergency cash in a jar, so I broke into that and went up to the supermarket. The place was rammed and the queues went back down all the aisles. People are panic buying, I suppose. And of course it was cash only, and it was slow because the people on the checkouts were using calculators because none of the regular cash till stuff was working. A fight broke out in one of the aisles between two men who'd both come in for baby formula. There was only one carton left and they both went for it at the same time, and it came to blows. and they had to be separated by some of the other customers and a member of staff. Someone suggested calling the police, but someone else said the police weren't responding to emergency calls. Apparently their system is all computerized now. They have radios and stuff, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem, but I suppose there must be lots of incidents like this, and they're probably swamped. I got some food for Blackwood and some bread and some tinned stuff. I don't know how long this is going to last, so best to be prepared. I can't see it going on past the weekend. The power just went out. It's 5 o'clock roughly. I've been home most of the day reading. I was going to go for a walk, but I got a few hundred yards up the road and the atmosphere on the street was really strange and aggressive, so I came back. And that's when the power went out. I thought maybe the switch had been tripped, but I checked the fuse box and it was all fine. Looking out the window, I can't see anyone else's lights on, so it must be the whole area. The light's failing, but I do have a couple of tea lights in the cupboard, which should be enough to read by for a bit. London at night, with no lights. It's weird. You can actually see the stars, which is nice, but it must be scary, being out there in the dark. Day 3. Writing this is like having someone to talk to, even though I'm only really talking to myself. Mike and I had these great long conversations at the beginning about life, the universe and everything. They dropped off gradually. I suppose we thought we'd said everything. By the end we were barely talking. All my friends were Mike's friends, so it turned out. I suppose it shouldn't really make much difference if I can't call or text anyone anyway, but it does. My mobile phone has finally run out of juice. I got all the money I could find together and went up the road. I thought it was probably better to be safe than sorry and spend all the rest of the money on food for me and Blackwood, just in case the shops run out of stuff before this is over. But the shops were all closed. Of course they were, because they didn't have any power either. I should have thought. Mind you, I wasn't the only one. There was a decent-sized crowd outside the supermarket and the mood was pretty unpleasant. I stayed back and listened to people in case anyone mentioned a place that might still be open. A lot of people seemed to be blaming the government, and a few were saying this was a terrorist attack. One woman was talking about the nuclear power stations. She said she'd seen something on the telly a while back about how nuclear reactors need power to be regulated. Someone else said they'd heard the army was setting up refugee camps with food and water and everything. That all seemed a bit far-fetched. Refugee camps? Just because the internet's down and there's a power cut? But then someone said that it's not as easy as going back to how things were. Everything is online now. I suppose they thought this could never go wrong. I heard the sound of glass smashing, and when I looked around, someone had thrown a bin through the supermarket window and people were already rushing into the shop and grabbing what was left from the shelves. A few people were shouting at them to stop, but nobody was paying those people any attention. A man came striding past me carrying a shopping bag stuffed with vegetables, packets of salad and stuff he must have taken from the supermarket. And then I heard running footsteps and shouting, and I turned and these two guys barreled into the man and the shopping, and they just started hitting him. And then he was on the ground and he still wouldn't let go of the bag, and there was blood everywhere, and they kept on hitting him. And one of them looked up at me and I just turned and ran all the way home. From the window I can see that all the shop fronts have been smashed now. Fights have been breaking out all afternoon, and I've seen people on their own getting attacked by larger groups. I've locked the door and all the windows. It's just me and Blackwood. We have enough food for 3 days. I keep crying, which is stupid. Day 4. I've put a wooden rolling pin in my bag, and I've wrapped the good kitchen knife in an old t-shirt and put it in my coat pocket. I felt silly doing it, but I feel safer for having them. I am going out. I'm going to walk into town to Westminster. If the government can't get information out to us, then I'll go to them and find out what's going on. I can't just sit here. I couldn't get near to Parliament Square. The crowd stretched all the way back down Whitehall and into Trafalgar Square. The shop fronts that weren't boarded up had been smashed, and a few of them had been burned out. Several police vans appeared at the edge of the crowd. People surged towards them. There was a series of bangs, black canisters arcing over the top of the crowd, and then I found myself fighting for breath like there was no air in my lungs, eyes stinging and crying. And then the crowd was moving, and I was swept along up Charing Cross Road, running wildly with no aim or purpose but to get away. Day 5. I've barricaded the door. They came last night. Some kind of gang. I didn't get a good look at them. They broke into the building. I think they managed to get into Mr. Metzger's flat downstairs. I hope he wasn't there. They tried to get in here, but then they went away. Blackwood ran and hid under the bed. She still won't come out. The water has stopped running. Nothing from the tap, and the toilet isn't refilling. I'm not safe in my own home. We're down to the last of our food. I'm thinking I should try to get to Mum's. It has to be safer out in the countryside. I don't know how long it'll take to walk there. I suppose it would be most of a day, so I should leave first thing tomorrow morning. I want to take Blackwood with me because I don't want to leave her here, but I can't carry her in her box all the way. I've got a suitcase with wheels on. Maybe I could cut some air holes into that, put her in there. There was someone at the door just now, just as we were getting ready to leave. They were shining a torch through the letterbox. I couldn't tell if they were looking to help or if they were intending to break in to steal stuff. I kept still and didn't say anything, and they went away again. I'm going to leave this book here. It's silly to take it with me. It's just more to carry. When I come back, in a few days' time, hopefully I can add another entry saying, everything is fine now, back to normal. And this was just a weird week where everything went on the fritz. I'm leaving it open on the table with the pen next to it, all ready. Wish me luck. This radio play was BBC Radio 4 Dark Vignettes, part of their Dangerous Vision series. It was called Blackout by Julian Simpson. It was originally read by Nicola Walker, directed by Julian Simpson, and produced by Jeremy Osborne. It was a Sweet Talk production for BBC Radio 4 and was originally broadcast on Sunday the 22nd of May 2016 at 19:45. It's transcribed and read here for Tea Room at the End of the World. Thank you for listening.